get started.
Yeah, so we want to thank you all again so much for joining us this afternoon or evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. My name is Erin,
And I'm Monica.
and we both work for the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. So you get two of us today. Leave No Trace is a national nonprofit and really an international movement that works to provide education to everyone about how we can protect the outdoor areas that we love, how we can become environmental stewards, and how we can really understand the impacts that we cause and how we can minimize those impacts. We have been partnered with Women Who Hike for a while now, so we are really happy to be able to be talking to all of you. We know that this organization does a lot of work to incorporate Leave No Trace really throughout everything that you do. So we're really excited to kind of talk to you all today, teach you some things, and also learn from you as well. One thing that I want to mention is that Leave No Trace really recognizes that everyone's relationship to the outdoors is personal and it is unique to that individual. And we believe that Leave No Trace and the outdoors are for all people, but in order to create a space for all people, we really need to have diversity, equity, and inclusion as core values that we are committed to. And as a piece of this, Leave No Trace, along with Women Who Hike, have both signed the Outdoor CEO Diversity Pledge. This is just one kind of step in this constant and continuous work that we're doing. We also want to take a moment to acknowledge that all of the land that we recreate on is the ancestral land of different Native communities and Indigenous people. And while today we're really kind of talking very broadly, we're tuning in from all over the US, even some people from Canada, I would really encourage you to do some research in your own community and the places that you recreate to find out what Native tribes and Indigenous people's ancestral land you recreate on regularly.
Exactly. So just to give you an overview of what we have planned to share with you all today, we're going to go ahead and start with a background about what Leave No Trace is, what it really means to you, including talking about the 7 principles. Then we'll talk a little bit about our COVID-19 recommendations within there, and we'll also touch on our social media guidelines. And so beyond that, we'll provide y'all with some additional resources. So even after this webinar, you can continue on in your Leave No Trace education and sharing with other people. I mentioned before, there will be time for questions at the end. So feel free to use that Q&A feature throughout to ask us questions. That'll be the best way that can ensure that we'll get to your questions. And if we're not answering them throughout, just know that we'll have that time saved at the end to make sure that we do. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Go ahead and feel free to answer in the chat. And the question here is, what is Leave No Trace? Now, I know that y'all are tuning in because of your connection with Women Who Hike. How much have you heard of Leave No Trace before? Maybe it's a ton, maybe you're a master educator, maybe you've heard it a few times, but aren't really sure, what kind of what it stands for. So feel free to answer that in the chat. And as we continue on, what we generally say is Leave No Trace is a framework for making good decisions outside. So as for everybody, Leave No Trace might be a little bit different of a thing, but generally, oh, sorry, we got a little answer here. Someone said they know a little bit about the framework, but they want to refresh themselves. So generally, we will talk more about outdoor ethics, but a great way to think about it is that we all have our own internal outdoor ethic, and it's kind of like this guiding compass. So today we'll be providing you with more of a framework of Leave No Trace education, and we'll talk about those 7 principles, which, by the way, they're in no way rules. They are guidelines. And so that's really important to be thinking about. We're going to be providing you with these tools and education for you to be making those choices, because we're not going to be out there with you when you're out on the trail doing those different things. So those are choices for you to make. And it's going to vary. There's going to be gray area. There's going to be different things. So these are all choices that we have to make on an individual level using our personal outdoor ethic. So why leave no trace is important is because 9 out of 10 people are uninformed about the outdoors, and they go outside seeking an exciting recreational experience, which is amazing, but then impacts are created due to being uninformed. And it's really important to touch on that fact that for the most part, people that are creating impacts in outdoor spaces, they're not creating impacts because they're malicious or because they want to, treat the outdoors in a bad way. It's because they simply are uninformed. And it's really important to remember that, and being kind to each other, which we'll touch on more too, but just really thinking about what we can do to prevent these impacts and learn from one another, grow together, and learn how to practice leave no trace by minimizing impacts.
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about impacts, but we want to kind of break down what we mean when we say impacts. And really what they are is just the consequences of our actions. Anytime we even just step outside our front door, we are in an ecosystem, and our behaviors can impact or alter or damage that ecosystem if we're not mindful of what we're doing and how we're behaving there. And all of these impacts that we're talking about, they are avoidable with leave no trace. They're things that we can kind of practice leave no trace, put it into action, and minimize in these outdoor areas. We have some kind of broad categories of impacts, some kind of broad ways that we generally cause these in an outdoor area. The first of that is wildlife. And as you can see in this slide here, that is a wild animal that has been pretty significantly impacted. Our trash and our behaviors can impact animals' ability to kind of get the food that they need. It can change their behaviors and their habits. Another broad category is our impact to soil. Soil can be compacted, the composition of soil can be changed, we can cause erosion. All of those things are going to alter that ecosystem. The next one is going to be vegetation impacts. And this can be vegetation loss, this can be tree carving. We can damage a lot of these areas if we're not mindful of how we're traveling and camping in them. We can impact cultural resources. As I mentioned before, pretty much everywhere we go outside has cultural and historical significance. And if we aren't aware of this fact, we can cause some impact to that significance. Our campfires, this is one that is pretty kind of on the forefront of everyone's mind right now. The largest impact of that can be wildfires, but we can sterilize soil. Even just collecting firewood can cause some impacts to ecosystems. The final two are impacts to water resources. This is a really common one because most of the places we like to get outdoors are along waterways. They provide opportunities for all these different activities. They're really fun places to go, but we can cause water contamination and pollution. And while we might be able to filter those things out, the plants and animals that depend on that water cannot. The last one is one that we often think less about, but is still very important, and that is our impact to other visitors. So we're all coming outside, we are sharing this resource, and everyone is seeking certain benefits from outdoor experiences. Maybe it is some peace, maybe it is a challenge, maybe it's just time to spend with your family. And if we're not mindful of how our actions are affecting other visitors, we can alter their ability to kind of get those benefits. Things like overcrowding, noise pollution, user conflicts, those can all be impacts to all of these visitors around us. So we're going to show you some more photos of impacts. And what I want you to do is think about how these impacts make you feel. How these photos make you feel, what your reaction is. Maybe they make you sad, maybe they make you angry. And then also think about maybe some impacts you've seen in your own outdoor recreation. Things that these photos remind you of, or those kind of broad categories, things that came to mind when I was talking about that. And the reason why some of these photos might be making you mad, this photo right here makes me pretty mad and pretty sad all at the same time. The reason for that, and the reason why you can probably think of other impacts, is because whether or not you've ever thought about it before, you already have your own personal outdoor ethic. So our full name, the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics, is that for a reason. We are not the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Rules, because we're not trying to provide you rules for how you should go outside. We're trying to build a collective outdoor ethic. And I like to think of my ethic as what I do when no one is watching, when there are no external kind of consequences, how I decide what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to me in that outdoor space. And this ethic is personal to us, but the more we can talk about it and share our outdoor ethic, we can learn from each other and we can better understand and build this kind of collective outdoor ethic. So to help you all understand your own personal outdoor ethic a little more, to really kind of tap into that, we are going to find out what bothers you the most.
Exactly. So we're going to play a little activity here. We're going to put a poll up on the screen. And so we're going to have some different impacts on there. So go ahead and answer, out of those impacts, which one bothers you the most? Say you're walking along on a hike and you see these impacts. So I'll go ahead and read them out. So there's toilet paper sticking out from underneath a rock, names carved into trees, half-burned food scraps, and trash in a fire ring. So of those impacts, which one bothers you the most? Just as a note, as we were showing those different impacts, Rosa made a great point that said light and noise pollution as well as another impact. So we're gonna go ahead and share those results with you all. And it looks like the one that really bothered people the most was names carved into trees. That is a really important one. And it's important to understand why it can be such a negative impact. Trees actually have skin that's similar to humans. And when you cut into it, it can get infected and it can lead trees to get sick and die just like humans might. The other two following behind were the toilet paper sticking out from underneath the rock came in second, and half-burned food scraps and trash in a fire ring. And somebody mentioned that they'd love to say all of them. Definitely, it can be hard to pick just one. So keep thinking about that. We'll do one more round here and we'll see what bothers you the most with these three. So the next three impacts are people getting too close and chasing wildlife, social trails from people cutting switchbacks. I see that one often. Trash along trail at camp, along your street at home. And remember, while Leave No Trace originated in the backcountry, this can be in your day-to-day life as well. So I love that it says that, at your street at home. And so if there's one that really irks you, feel free to go into more detail about what you experience at home as well. So here's our results for the next one. So it looks like the big winner for what bothered people the most was trash along trail at camp, along your street at home. Totally, I totally feel y'all. And second was people getting too close and chasing wildlife, not respecting them and giving them enough space. And then third was social trails from people cutting switchbacks. So what we're seeing here is really an example of how there's not one impact that's can be ultimately the worst of the others, right? We're all going to have these varying opinions. And what that shows us is that we all have our own personal outdoor ethic. We're going to have different opinions and different interactions with outdoor spaces where different impacts are going to bother us more. And that's really powerful because it shows us that not only that we have that outdoor ethic, but that we can learn from each other. Because one impact that I create with maybe potentially inadvertently, maybe my friend has an anecdotal story that they can share about how that impact really affects them, and we can learn from each other. And so it's really important to think about when we're looking at these types of impacts. These are all impacts that are easily avoidable and preventable when it's hand in hand with education. So on that note, it's really important to think about the fact that it's not just one or two of us, right? It's not just you or me, it's all of us, all day long, all year long. Now, last year alone, there were over 13 billion individual visits to outdoor spaces. And so when you think about those different impacts that are really irking us, that are really driving us crazy, think about that, 13 billion visits. That's a lot of people that can potentially be causing impacts, but that's also a lot of people that can be preventing those impacts and really practicing leave no trace. Just imagine what these natural spaces can look like when everybody practices leave no trace. So it takes all of us, and that's the important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's also important to think about leave no trace as a spectrum. So on one side, we have significant impacts, and then on the other side, we have few impacts. And the important part isn't where you fall on this spectrum, it's not where you start. It's that anytime you do anything to practice leave no trace, big or small, you are moving yourself and moving us all collectively more towards that green, fewer impacts side. It's really not about being perfect. It's just about putting these things into action. We don't need like 100 people practicing leave no trace perfectly. We need thousands and thousands of people practicing it imperfectly. Because when we do that, as Monika was saying, we have this collective outdoor ethic and we have some cumulative benefits because we're all putting that into action. We're moving towards that green side and we can start to see some real benefits in our outdoor spaces. I also want to mention before we really kind of dive into those 7 principles that Leave No Trace is a research and science-based organization. And what we mean by this is all of the things we're going to talk about within those 7 principles, everything that all these practices that we're talking about that we preach to put into action, they come from that science and research. So we have done a lot of work in recreation ecology to really understand how our recreation is affecting those ecosystems and what the best way to minimize that is. Just one example of this, later we'll talk about how to poop outside, and we'll talk about cat holes. They are the hole that you would bury your poop in, and they should be around 6 to 8 inches deep. And that's not some arbitrary number that we just thought sounded good. That is because some poor grad student had to bury human waste at different levels, dig it up periodically, and find out what layer of soil would actually break down poop the fastest. So a lot of this research is going to be kind of things we mentioned today, but if you are really interested in that research, you can always go to our website and really kind of dive into those studies and learn more about everything that kind of led to these 7 principles and these practices that we talk about with Leave No Trace.
Yes, and as Erin said, from all of that science and research came the 7 principles. And so these are 7 main areas that we've found from our research that we can best work together to minimize our impacts outside. Now, as we've mentioned, we'll say it again, these are not rules. These are guidelines. These are guidelines to help one another wherever you are going. If you're going on a trip and just in your day-to-day life, you can use these guidelines to help guide you to ensure that you're making decisions that take care of the natural world. So what we're going to do is we have some fun little hand signs to help you remember. It's a mnemonic hand device to help you remember the 7 principles. So I'm going to go ahead and momentarily make us bigger on the screen here so you can see both of us. Hi, everybody. And so we're going to go ahead and teach these hand signs. Now, as we're doing them, we really encourage you to go ahead and join in with us. Feel free to follow along and do them with us, and also to say it with us. Remember, we can't see you, we can't hear you, so you can get as loud, as weird as you want, have fun with it, and do whatever you can to remember them, because they're great tools to remember. Okay, so here we go. Number 1 is plan ahead and prepare. So you're thinking, you're reading up, you're researching and learning about the area that you're going, and you're writing it all down. So that's going to be rules and regulations of the area, what the weather's looking like, if you're going to need a permit, what your group needs, expectations and goals are, maybe their levels and abilities, things like that.
Our second principle, we're going to go ahead and make our number 2. We are going to travel and camp on durable surfaces. So this is really about protecting all the vegetation, all the fragile surfaces that we might be hiking, camping, walking, biking on, knowing that we should be sticking to trails as much as we can. And if we're going off trail, how to do that in a way that's going to be as minimally impactful as possible.
Exactly. And now number 3, you're gonna make a 3 and you're gonna dig a hole with your hands. So you're disposing of waste properly. So you're digging that cat hole and then you're either burying it, covering that cat hole up, or throwing trash away in a trash can. So when we talk about disposing of waste properly, there's 3 main areas that we talk about, and that is trash, human waste, and gray water. And we're gonna stick primarily to trash and human waste today.
Our 4th principle is where it gets kind of tricky. So you're going to make 2 2s like this. Turn that around and you've got a camera. Our 4th principle is to leave what you find. So you can take pictures, leave only footprints, that kind of thing. Leave what you find is really about understanding that the things we find in nature have a role to play there, either in the ecosystem or in the story of that place. And as often as we can, we want to leave those things as we find them. That doesn't mean we can't still interact with nature, but we want to do so in a way that isn't going to eliminate those things, that's going to leave them for other people to enjoy, and is going to ensure that if they're natural items, they can still play that role in the ecosystem.
Number 5 is you can put up your hand and it's minimize campfire impacts. You're making a little campfire there. And so really what we talk about when we're talking about minimizing campfire impacts is 8 out of 10 wildfires are human caused. But another way to think of that is 8 out of 10 wildfires that are human caused are preventable. There's so much that we can do to ensure that we're controlling the size of the campfires that we make, that when we're out in outdoor natural spaces, that we're being aware and creating campfires, and anytime that there's fire at play, that we're ensuring that we're doing so in a responsible way, in a way that we know that we can control it so that it's not leading to bigger impacts such as wildfires.
Yeah, our 6th principle is respect wildlife. So I have to shrink down a little, but we've got some cool little antlers there. Mm-hmm. Pretty much all of our outdoor spaces, we are a guest in, and we're in the home of wildlife. And we want to act like we would as a guest in any other home. We want to be respectful. We want to keep our trash and our smellables secured away from them so that we're not altering their health or their behaviors. And we want to keep a safe distance from them so that we are going to be safe and they are going to be safe.
And our last principle, number 7, is be considerate of other visitors. So what's really important to think about is just being kind and giving each other the benefit of the doubt. If you see somebody that's doing something that's not so, leave no trace, taking the time to explain that why to them instead of just assuming that they don't, that they're doing it intentionally. Really, most people that are not practicing leave no trace are doing so because they're uninformed, and there's always that education there that we can all provide each other. We can all learn from each other, and we can all give each other that benefit of the doubt. We want to ensure that the outdoors is an inclusive, loving, kind space for all, and to do that, we all have to be kind and be considerate of each other. So definitely continue to have those in mind as we remind you that we can all learn and grow from each other. We all can just continue to, as we put these principles into practice, I continue to learn new things. And so we're gonna go ahead and dive into principle number 1, which, if y'all remember, is to plan ahead and prepare. And so as I mentioned, this is all about knowing the rules and regulations of the area and just everything before you head out on your trip. So that's going to be things like knowing the weather, knowing what the terrain will be like if you're going out on a hike, if you're going out on a camping trip. This will help you prepare what gear to have packed, what food and water you might pack, and going back to knowing those group needs and expectations. That'll help you be prepared in every way possible so that you can successfully carry out the other 6 principles. Now, plan ahead and prepare is especially important because how you interact with the outdoors is going to vary based on the place that you're going. So it's incredibly important to acknowledge that within all this education, there are so many choices that you're going to be making on your own terms, and it really comes down to that place that you're going. This is especially, it's always important, but especially important right now in times of this pandemic, COVID-19. So we actually partnered with, Leave No Trace partnered with Penn State University to conduct some research regarding human behavior and interactions with these outdoor spaces, natural spaces during COVID-19. From that, we've developed some recommendations. And so we definitely encourage y'all to seek those out. We will put them in the chat, and so you can read more into them. But essentially, it's all about just paying attention close to the guidance in your local area, doing you can to, when you do go out, to make sure that you're following the rules and regulations. Things are changing rapidly right now, and probably a lot of us have experienced an influx of visitors going outside, which is incredible and really amazing, but it's all about making sure that we are practicing Leave No Trace while we're doing so. So you can do this by avoiding times of high use. You can even look on park websites and seeing what days and times of the week that there are not as many people in that area, and expecting closures. There are often, even if the park or natural area is open to recreate in, oftentimes bathrooms are closed right now. So being prepared with a backup plan of where to go to the bathroom and a backup plan of where to go if that area is totally closed. So that's just a few of the concepts behind our recommendations. We definitely encourage you to review those COVID-19 recommendations as a part of your planning ahead and preparing.
So we're going to move on to that second principle, which was to travel and camp on durable surfaces. But before we really kind of dive into this principle, we want to take some time to define what durable even means. So when we say durable, we are talking about a surfaces, and surface is just like whatever it is you're walking on. Maybe it's rock, grass, a trail, whatever it is that you're walking, camping, hiking, biking on. Durability refers to that surface's ability to withstand that travel and withstand that impact. So think about what it is you're walking or camping or hiking on, and how it's going to react to your footsteps or your tent. Is it going to be damaged? Is it going to be altered? Or is it going to be pretty much the same as it was when you got there? If something is going to be able to handle that traveling, that camping, then we refer to it as a durable surface. It can withstand that impacts. It's not really going to be changed or damaged, then it's going to be durable. If it is something that is easily damaged, easily altered, or even is something that can be damaged after repeated times that people are walking by or repeated nights camping, then it's probably a non-durable surface. And these aren't completely black and white. They can change depending on whether a surface is wet or dry, or on the season, or on what it is you're doing. So we want to try to just think through what we're on, how durable it is, and try to choose the most durable things possible.
So to dive a little bit more into specific surfaces and get a feel for what exactly it is that we're talking about when comparing surfaces, we're going to play a game called Durable or Not Durable. I am your host today, and I'm so excited to be here with you. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some different images of surfaces, and I invite you in the chat to let us know if you think that surface is durable or not durable, and why. That's the most important part. Why? Because as Erin said, it's not black and white, it is gray. So letting us know that why behind what you're thinking of why that surface is considered durable or not durable. So here we go. First surface, let's see, rock. Durable or not durable? Let us know in the chat for sure. So, and remember to let us know that why. That's the most important part, to really be critically thinking. Imagine you're out on a hike, maybe you're out camping, and remember, I'm getting a few answers here, but remember to let us know why you think so. So we see somebody walking there, and it really, now it can depend, right? If you're a climber, there can be times where there's different types of rock, maybe really old, decaying rock, rotten. So it's really important to be thinking about. Okay, we have some answers coming in here. Let's see what they're saying. We have not durable, can increase erosion, especially on softer rock like shale. Durable because it's solid and can't be altered easily. Durable, it's a hard surface, hard to erode. Durable, hard, but if lichen on rock, might not be durable. Ooh, I like that differentiation. Let's see, it doesn't erode easily, and so durable. A few more here. Pretty durable, does not show impact over time from hikers. Also, rock is not that likely to erode. Ooh, I like how there's a conversation going. Somebody else said, ooh, I agree about the lichen. All right, so let's get a drum roll here. Let's see. It is durable. You are correct. And so if you see those people walking on there, if you think about if you were to hike through there, or if everybody on this webinar, let's see, there's 70 of us, including Erin and I, that would mean that if all of us were walking along there, that it would be really resistant. It would be able to withstand all of our feet walking along, even if we had all of our backpacks. And so there is, some nuances, right? Because if it was a specific type of rock like shale that was softer, like somebody mentioned, that's not going to be as durable. So it does depend on the rock, and it does depend on every type of surface. So that's why we're talking about this. But generally for rock like this on a walkway, and if you think about a designated site that was built to have a camp on it, that's going to be a durable surface. I really want to acknowledge, I think it's great that people pointed out about the lichen on rocks. That is totally correct. That is what we say too. If there is lichen on a rock, we consider that a not durable surface. Lichen is a living organism, and it is not very durable when you step on it. So we want to do everything we can do to avoid it. That said, if you're in a high alpine meadow and you have a choice between a really sensitive plant and a lichen covered rock, of the two, that might be the more durable surface. So it's really important to be thinking about those choices all the time. But y'all are spot on. Okay, let's do a few more. Here we go. Next surface is dry grass. What do we think? Dry grass. We see people, oops, I gave it away. We have some people walking on it right there. And remember to provide that why behind why you think a surface is durable. Because let's think about, oh, we have one durable because it's dormant. Yeah. So then think about if you've ever been walking on grass, or if you've had a picnic on grass, anything like that. And maybe played soccer on it before. It's definitely a surface that you've likely spent some time on. Okay, we have a couple more answers. Not durable because easily broken down. Durable, most grasses quickly recover and regrow fast. Durable because it's pretty resilient, right? Not durable, it's alive and is plant life. Depends on the grass. So, and not durable because it's dry and fragile. So we have lots of different answers here. So let's see if anybody saw it. It is durable. So we do say grass like this is considered durable. If you think about if you have had a picnic or walked all on it, as somebody mentioned, it's going to be more resilient. It's going to bounce back, right? And it's not going to be as resistant as that rock that we were talking about, but it's going to be able to bounce back. And so we consider dry grass a durable surface. It is incredibly important to acknowledge that it does depend on the type of grass. There are grasses that can be considered very, very sensitive. For this photo and the grass that we're talking about that we're having picnics on or camping on, it is considered a durable surface. But if it is wet grass, if it's raining, if you think about any time that you've been recreating out on wet grass, it gets torn up, it's likely to get more muddy. We actually say that wet grass is a non-durable surface. So that's really important to keep in mind, that it can depend on the ecosystem and the weather and everything like that. So the surface itself can vary as well. Okay, we got two more for y'all. Let's see here. The next surface is poppies. Let us know what you think. If you think it's a durable or non-durable surface. Let's say we have someone saying not durable. So let's say you're walking all over them, or even if you're just picking a bouquet, something like that, remember to include that Y in there. Oh, we have the state flower there. Yeah. Okay, we have quite a few answers. Not durable, being walked on can cause them to die and not regrow. Yes, we'll sidetrack you on your way to the wizard. That is honestly like the best answer ever. Not durable, slow to regrow. Yeah, very fragile. Okay, let's see, y'all. What do we think? Drum roll. Sounds like y'all are pretty much in agreement. Correct. Not durable. Like y'all said, if you are to just walk all over those flowers, you're gonna trample them, and they can be less likely to grow back depending on the type of flower, type of vegetation. Also, if you are to pick them and take them home with you, then you're leaving less habitat. And that's really important to think about, is that why behind our actions, that why behind our impacts. When you trample all over wildflowers and different vegetation, you're effectively taking away different habitat for different pollinators, such as birds and bees, and different animals that might eat flowers, such as marmots. And so depending on the ecosystem that you're in, when you're trampling all over flowers and different vegetation, you can be taking away habitat from different little critters in the area. So we got one more for y'all. Extra special hard one, living biological soil crust. Let's see what y'all think. Is this a durable or not durable surface? Let us know. And remember that why living biological soil crust is incredibly fascinating. So it actually has a lot of really incredible properties, a part of it. We already have a couple different answers coming in, so I'll go ahead and read those. Definitely not durable, somebody said. Not durable because they are organisms, yes. Easily eroded and destroyed. Not durable because it's alive. It takes decades to grow. Minimal amount supports almost all other plant life. Oh, yes. Keep surface in place when intact. Would cause major erosion. All right, seems like we're in agreement here. Let's see. Not durable, you all are correct. So living biological soil crust is incredible. As you all said, it's all these tiny microorganisms working together that they bind together to create this crust on top of the surface. And they actually work together to retain moisture, hold in water and nutrients. And that's what promotes plant growth in the desert. So without living biological soil crust, there would actually be no living plant life in the desert, which is just absolutely wild to think about. So it does grow very slowly, about at the same rate as a tree. So you can kill decades of life with just a single step. So y'all are just spot on there, but it's really important to think about, especially when you're with new friends or with family, anybody you're with, anyone that you are walking on different surfaces, to have those conversations of just, why does this even matter? How is this helping sustain this ecosystem? And how can I help ensure the proper functioning of that ecosystem? Nice job, y'all.
Yeah, you all killed it. You did such a good job guessing those durable surfaces. But just thinking about durable surfaces often isn't enough. We also want to think about how we are traveling through that landscape, where we're setting up our tent, how we're interacting with it. And this brings up this idea of concentration versus dispersing. So as you can see here in this photo, we have a trail. It's built, it's there, it's ready for us to use. And anytime we are somewhere with trails or with kind of established campsites, we want to use those. We want to concentrate all of our impacts to those already established areas. This trail really isn't going to be further damaged the more we use it. It's there, it's built for us. We can continually use it. So many people can hike this trail every single day, and it's not really going to be further impacted. The same thing happens with campsites that are established. So we want to concentrate all of our impacts to these areas. We've probably heard these mantras like stick to trails, good campsites are found and not made. That is the idea of concentrating all of those impacts to these areas. But there are going to be times where we need to go off trail. Maybe we are going off trail to go to the bathroom or to find water, or there are even whole national parks that don't really have established trails. Death Valley and Denali National Park, for example, both of them are largely cross-country parks, so you are supposed to hike off trail. And we want to know how to do this in the most impactful or the least impactful way, the way that is going to preserve that ecosystem as much as possible. So in areas where there aren't trails, where there aren't campsites, we want to disperse our impact. We want to spread that impact out over a wider area so that no one spot is getting repeatedly impacted, is getting repeated footfalls or repeated nights of camping. So like you can see in this photo here, this group has totally spread out. They're all taking a varied path where they're trying to go, and you can't see where any one person has walked because they're spreading out that impact. We actually know from research that as few as 25 passes on most types of vegetation will already create a new trail, and as few as 12 nights of camping a year will push an area kind of past its ability to easily recover. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. So if you're in an established area, concentrate all of that impact. And if you're off trail or in a more remote area, disperse that impact so we're not reaching those 25 passes or those 12 nights of camping.
Totally. And that's in Yellowstone, by the way.
Yeah, that's your photo.
It's kind of fun. The next thing that we're going to talk about is number 3. So if y'all remember, you're digging your cat hole here and you're disposing of waste properly. And that can also be throwing away your trash. So as I mentioned before, there's 3 main things that we talk about when we talk about disposing of waste properly. That is trash, human waste, and gray water. When we talk about gray water, that's primarily your water from cleaning your dishes and taking a bath, shower, things like that. We're gonna focus on trash and human waste today. Trash is something that is often connected with Leave No Trace. Oftentimes it's people that's a go-to thing that they think about when it comes to Leave No Trace. As you're learning, there's a lot more behind it, but it's also a really important thing to be thinking about. So we're gonna play another activity called Trash Timeline.
Yeah, so what we want to try to do is think about what happens when we leave our trash behind and why it's really impactful. If you can't tell already, at Leave No Trace, we are really interested in those whys because that really helps us understand the purpose behind all of these practices. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about some different really common litter items and how long they actually take to totally decompose, to totally break down when we leave them out as litter. So our first one here is an orange or a banana peel because they take about the same amount of time. So go ahead and tell us in the chat. I already see some guesses coming in, but tell us in the chat how long you think those items would last if they were left out as litter. So I see 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 1 to 2 months, 3 years, 1 month, 2 years to fully decompose. So those of you that are guessing 2 years, you are right on the dot. Orange and banana peels take about 2 years to totally decompose, to totally break down. And that can be quite a bit longer than we assume because they are, biodegradable or natural trash items. But even more than the fact that they take up to 2 years is that they are going to attract wildlife to areas where humans are. It can be attracting them to roadways or campsites or trails, wherever it is we're leaving this trash behind. And because it's not their natural food source, it can have some negative health implications for them. It can change their behavior. And these often aren't items that are natural to that ecosystem. So even as they're breaking down, they can add components to the soil and the water that aren't actually supposed to be in that area. And this isn't just for orange and banana peels. This is true of apple cores, of sunflower seed shells. So we want to pack out all of these items, even if they are biodegradable or natural. We still want to pack them out so that we're helping out the wildlife and we're not leaving items that aren't natural to that ecosystem. I actually have had park rangers tell me that barbecue flavored sunflower seed shells were enough to bring a bear to a campsite. So even these really small food items can still be harmful to wildlife, and it's important that we pack them out.
All right, so we have a few more items that we're going to share with you. So get ready to guess once again. The next item is an aluminum can. So go ahead and guess once again how long you think that this takes to decompose. Now, this one is interesting because there are alternative options, right? It is available to be recycled, but I see aluminum cans outside all of the time. So it's really important to be thinking about making sure that we're packing these items out. There seems to be, at least from my perspective, because I've been seeing a lot of cans in fire pits and different designated fire rings, that there's this misconception that they can be easily burned, and that's actually not the case. Aluminum cans need extra hot heat to burn fully through and to actually break down with fire. And it's to a degree that most often just a campfire is not going to be able to get that hot to burn through that aluminum can. So remembering to pack those out with us. So we have a few different guesses here. Let's see. 100 years or more. We got quite a few 100 years. 75, 70, 50. So our range is from 50 to 100. Let's see. Oh, we got a 300 years going. All right, let's see, y'all. 80 to 100 years. Dang, y'all are good. That was some good guesses. So as I was saying, aluminum cans are recyclable. And fun fact, they're actually infinitely recyclable. So while we definitely encourage you to always be seeking out reusable options as alternatives to single-use items, knowing that aluminum cans are infinitely recyclable really gives us the power to choose to always be recycling these and to never have a reason to not pack them out as well. A really fascinating fact about an aluminum can is that its average lifespan from going into production, being filled up with whatever liquid it has, being put on the shelf, somebody buying it, drinking it, recycling it, and then having it be made into a new can all over again is about 3 months. So that's a really productive life cycle. Again, we want to be focusing on reusables, but to some degree, aluminum cans and their ability to be recycled infinitely has some level of sustainability. So think about that anytime that you see anyone that's maybe not going to pack out their cans or leave them in that campfire for the next camper to deal with.
So we have one last piece of trash to talk about, and that is plastic bottles. So go ahead and guess in the comments how long you think those plastic bottles are going to take to decompose. I see a never guess already. Yeah, infinity, 500 years, 5,000 years, never, forever, never, never. Yeah, I think you all are onto something here. So plastic bottles actually never really go away. There is some variation in the kind of grade and the type of plastic, but the lowest estimates are like 750 years, and then the most common estimates are never, that they never really go away. So what happens with plastic is it actually just kind of breaks down smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it becomes microplastics, which you've probably started to hear more and more about. We commonly hear about them in the ocean, but they've actually been found in almost all of our major riverways. Rocky Mountain National Park actually did a study last year where they gathered rainwater, and 80% of the rainwater they collected contained microplastics. And not all of this is coming from just our plastic litter. There are microfibers from our clothing, there's industrial plastics, but anything we can do to keep these plastic items out of the environment, we're going to be minimizing that plastic pollution and that plastic contamination. These are also super harmful for wildlife because if they ingest that, it's not going to break down, and it can often lead to death of that animal because they just have a blockage or a stomach full of plastic. So plastic is also recyclable in some cases, but it is nowhere near as recyclable as aluminum is. So trying to minimize the plastic that you're using. And then if you are using plastic, making sure you pack it out if it's available to you, recycling it, but really trying to make sure that these items aren't winding up on the side of a trail or, on the side of our walk that we take in our neighborhood. We want to make sure that these are properly disposed of, so we're minimizing that contamination.
Definitely. There are lots of really great alternatives. Yeah. Okay, y'all. So now we're going to talk about waste. We're going to talk about pooping outside. So we talked about trash. We're going to also talk about all the different ways to go outside. We're going to talk about pee and menstrual waste, but I'm going to start with pooping outside because it's fun. So always, first and foremost, anytime you have to poop, where facilities exist, always use those first. So I'm going to talk about how to properly bury your waste, but remember, if there's a bathroom, and this is probably your preference anyway, but sometimes people get really excited. And so always make sure to seek out a bathroom where it exists. As I mentioned, with COVID-19 and bathrooms being closed, it's especially important to be prepared no matter what. So learning the rules and regulations before you go is incredibly important to understand if it's allowed to bury your waste where there are no bathroom facilities. Where it is allowed, the best thing that you can do is bury your waste, and where regulations require you to, and where burying your waste is not allowed, but facilities are not available, you will have to pack out your waste. So it's important to research ahead of time, know your options, know what's going to be available to you, and be prepared no matter the situation. A great way to be prepared no matter what is to build your own little poop kit. I have my own little poop kit right here. It's actually the one in the picture. So there's 5 main items that we always carry in our kits. To start with is hand sanitizer. Now, even if you do have bathroom facilities, making sure that you always have this, especially right now, is so great and important to have on you. Next is a trowel. And so most trowels are going to be about that 6 inches right there. It can be great and used as a ruler for digging your cat hole, which I'll talk more about in a moment. Then we have our FOPO bag, which is used to pack out our toilet paper and tampons, pads, everything like that, which Erin will talk more about. Feel free to let us know what you think FOPO stands for, and she'll let you know in just a little bit. And then having toilet paper is great. I like to have an extra little bit. This is more than I need if I were going on a backpacking trip. Maybe I would, take some time to pack it a little bit differently. But since we always, generally before the pandemic, we were living full time on the road, camping everywhere we would go, this would come in handy often. And then always having a wag bag, having a way to pack out your waste so that you're prepared where regulations require you to and where you're not allowed. And even if you are more comfortable, if it's more accessible for you where you're at in your body or the place that you're in, to pack out your waste instead of having to squat if you can't get in the right position, everything like that. Just having one of these on hand so that you're prepared to poop no matter the circumstances. And so that is a great way, no matter what, to be prepared to poop outside. And so then this is for how to bury your waste. And so it's commonly known as a cat hole, and that's the hole that you bury your waste into. And so what we suggest is going 200 feet, which is about 70 big steps away from water, camp, and trails. And that's for a couple of different reasons. To begin with, to ensure that there's not going to be water running off and causing your poop to contaminate natural waterways. That's both for humans, any humans that are going to be collecting that water to drink, eat, or swim in, and also for animals to ensure that we're not contaminating animals' natural waterways where they live and drink from as well. Even when you bury your waste, it's really important to get far away from the water for those reasons. And from camp and trails is also just to to ensure that it's not unsightly or smelly for other visitors. Now, once you've gotten far enough away, you've gotten at least 200 feet, then we recommend digging that 6 to 8 inch cat hole. As Erin mentioned, this is rooted in research. So that 6 to 8 inches, as I mentioned, that's using, you can use your trowel. So you can dig a hole and then see once you get down to that organic soil layer. It's gonna be normally really dark and rich in color. When you get past that 6 to 8 inches, you'll hit mineral soil, and it's actually not going to break down as fast. So you want to get to that 6 to 8 inch range where you have that organic soil layer where there's lots of microorganisms, worms, things like that, that'll help break down your poop at the fastest rate. Now, when you poop, we definitely recommend to pack out your toilet paper, pads, tampons, everything like that whenever possible. Doing what you can to pack that out can just ensure that you're doing your part in making sure that it doesn't get out and get into other places. I'm sure we've all seen those little toilet paper flowers before. So, and there are areas where it is allowed to bury it, but as much as possible, it's great to pack it out. And then once you've done your business, you put everything in your hole, the best thing you can do is cover and disguise your cat hole to make it look like you never. Really important to mention is if you miss your hole, it's really great to use a rock or a stick or something like that to push your waste into the hole. Never let your trowel touch your waste, because then think about, you're gonna have to carry that out. It's gonna, if it were to get contaminated, it might be hard to clean, and you don't want that touching in any of your other stuff. So always using a rock or stick or something like that. And if you don't have toilet paper, you can use natural toilet paper options such as snow, rocks, or leaves, but making sure that whatever you use, you bury that in the cat hole with you. All right, that's the quick and dirty version of how to poop outside.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about pee and menstrual waste. So I just want to pose this question to you. If you just have to pee outside, do you think you need to dig a cat hole? And I'm sure everyone is like, please, please tell me no. And you do not have to dig a cat hole if you just have to pee outside. Our liquid human waste is pretty sterile. It's not going to have the contamination and the potential to spread disease that our solid human waste will, but it can still cause some contamination to water. So when we have to pee outside, it is still good practice to go 200 feet or 70 big steps away from water and away from trails and camp. So same thing to going away from trails and camps if you have to poop. This just gives you some privacy. It eliminates the chance for those social impacts. It creates a smell away from those areas, and it's just a much nicer experience for everyone involved. So still going 200 feet away from trails and camp and water. If you are in an area where there are a lot of animals attracted to the salts in our pee, mostly like mountain goats, bighorn sheep, things like that, it can be a good idea to pee on a rock, so that when they go to kind of dig those salts up, they're not tearing up a bunch of vegetation. It's on that solid surface. But that's going to depend a lot on the area that you're in and the type of wildlife around there. With pee also comes more toilet paper. And if we are someone who utilizes toilet paper when we have to pee, there are some good alternatives. Because as Monika was saying, we want to try to pack out our toilet paper. I did see one really awesome guess for what FOPO stands for. Someone guessed fear of pooping outside. That is very close. It is actually fear of packing out. So all of those items that we might be kind of afraid or unsure about how to pack out, we can put in our FOPO bag. And it is just a Ziploc bag that you wrap in duct tape. Mine is fancy green colored duct tape because I like to make it a little more fun. But you can pack out all of those items, your toilet paper, pads, and tampons in something like this. But if you're using toilet paper every time you have to pee, that might be a lot of toilet paper to be packing in and out. So a good alternative for that is a pee rag. So these can actually be something that's purpose-built that you buy to be a pee rag. These will generally have one side that is waterproof material and then one side that is antibacterial material. And then this hooks onto your backpack, you let it dry. When you get home, you throw it in the wash and then can reuse that continuously. If you don't want to buy a specific pee rag, things like bandanas or really any type of fabric will serve the same kind of purpose. So you can use that same thing, tie it to your backpack, and then wash it when you get home. And then you're not going to have to worry about packing all of that toilet paper in and out because that can just take up a lot of space, and it just makes things a little bit easier on you. I also want to talk about menstrual waste. And with all of these types of human waste, it's really important to talk about these things openly and confidently so that we can kind of end these stigmas and make people more comfortable. A lot of times impacts happen because people are embarrassed or they're afraid to ask what to do. And the more we can talk about it, the less likely it is that's going to happen. So the most common thing that we see are pads and tampons. And as Monica kind of was mentioning, those should always be packed out in something like your FOPO bag. They are going to take a long time to break down. We don't have great numbers for that because, surprise, surprise, pads and tampons haven't been studied as much as maybe we would like them to be. But we can assume based on other similar items like disposable diapers that take 450 years to break down, that they're going to take a significant amount of time. And they also have a lot of components that aren't natural to that area, so we always want to be packing those out. If we have maybe a backcountry pit toilet or something like that, they're still going to need to be packed out because they won't break down in that area either. And because of this, a lot of people have kind of switched it up and started using things like menstrual cups, because then you don't have the kind of added burden of packing all of these things in and out and carrying all of these items. So menstrual cups, because it's 2020 and we have cool new period technology, are a great alternative. And if you were using this, you would dispose of the waste in a cat hole. It's pretty easy to just use the same cat hole you're already using, but you could dig another if you needed to. It's the same measurements, 200 feet from water and 6 to 8 inches deep. And you would dispose of that waste in the cat hole. It's really helpful to have some kind of water with you, and you want it to be filtered water if you're in the backcountry, so that you can rinse this out. And any water that you use, all of that would just go into the cat hole. That's going to make it a little bit easier to rinse that out for you. And you always, always would want to have hand sanitizer. You want to have clean hands before you take the cup out, before you put the cup back in. That's just going to make sure that you are staying sanitary and you're staying healthy. That's going to just keep everything a lot cleaner. If you were, for some reason, in an area where you couldn't dig a cat hole and you're expected to pack out your human waste, you would need to pack out your menstrual waste as well. That could go in your wag bag, whatever you're using to pack out your human waste. And it's going to make sure that none of those things are left in the environment and we're not digging cat holes if maybe it's an area that it's not permitted or not recommended. There are all kinds of new period technologies too. There are things like period underwear, like reusable pads. More and more things are happening all the time. Yeah, Monika has a reusable pad there. And these are things that we don't have a lot of experience using. I've never used the period panties myself, but if you have and you have had good experiences using them hiking and camping, let us know in the chat if you're comfortable. I'd love to hear more about your experiences. But one thing that's important to remember is all of these items, your hand sanitizer, your FOPO bag, these are all going to be smellables. They're part of your trash and your smellables. So if you're in bear country or really anywhere, it's a good idea to store them somewhere that animals cannot access them. There is a really long-standing myth that bears are attracted to women on their periods, which is not true. There is no scientific evidence to demonstrate that. In fact, the science tells us the opposite, that bears are not attracted to women on their periods. But it's still important to store all of these things as trash and as smellables so that we're not attracting bears to our campsite, because even things like hand sanitizer, that smell is going to be something that they associate with being a smellable, and we want to make sure we're storing them properly. That is just a bit about dispose of waste properly. It is a massive principle, and there is a lot more to learn, but we hope that we were able to kind of answer some of your questions. And if you have further questions, remember that Q&A, and you can put those in there, and we'll have time at the end to dive into anything else that maybe you're still confused about or still have questions on.
Definitely. And I'm just going to read a few more of the comments here as you were talking, Erin. People said, love my Kula. And actually quite a few people were talking about loving their Kula. And they're another actually partner of ours who we absolutely love. They are amazing. And it's really fun to be having this conversation because Erin and I were just talking about it just in preparation for this. And neither of us have tried the Thinks period panties, but Eliza, you just said that they are amazing. I was literally just reading the reviews on those last night being like, I need to get me some of these. So
Mariah says that she just got some and that they've worked great so far. Haven't tried them out while camping yet. Yeah, so that's only thing that I can really think of with those is if you had used ones, you'd probably want to store them as a smellable just because they're similar to a used pad or a used tampon. But other than that, they probably would be a great option if you don't want to worry about packing all these things in and out.
Totally. And yeah, as Erin said, feel free to keep talking in the chat and keep asking us those questions in the Q&A. We're going to go ahead and talk about respect wildlife, but keep that conversation going and we'll come back to it in the question section. So if y'all remember, 6 is respect wildlife. And so I'm just going to play a quick little video here, and this just has some great tips. We have lots of YouTube videos online, and we have some great tips for how to respect wildlife. The first one I'm going to talk about is to observe wildlife from a safe distance using something called the thumb trick. So you can go ahead and put your arm out straight, put your thumb up, close or cover one eye, and do your best to cover whatever animal's in front of you with your thumb. So if you can still see that animal behind your thumb, it means you're too close and you need to back up. The next thing that we talk about is to never feed wildlife. And this is both intentionally because, you know, you've probably seen people or maybe done it yourself, had like bird seed in your hands or intentionally fed ducks or different animals because you think they're cute. But it can also happen inadvertently. As Erin was mentioning about those sunflower seed shells, that's likely something that people meant to take with them and just accidentally left behind. And then lastly, storing food and trash securely. So doing what we can to ensure that all smellables, all trash is always put away, either in our bear boxes, in the ones that are provided to us if we are at a campsite, or in it still should be in a bear box within your car if you're in bear country. Doing what we can to ensure that we're not stressing animals out, that we're respecting them in their natural ecosystem, and that we're avoiding them getting sick or getting hurt. When we do have food or trash or smellables out, we're gonna attract animals to come into our spaces, either if that's out at a campsite, out on a hike, or even just in your backyard. When you see animals like deer or raccoons getting really close to you all the time, that's because they've lost their healthy fear of humans. They've become habituated. At times, we fall into patterns with certain types of wild animals in our neighborhoods that maybe that's just the way it is, but oftentimes in these natural areas that we talk about, it can lead to it being very dangerous for the animal. It can lead to animals having heightened stress responses, lead to them having changes in their hormones, and can even lead to them not being able to rear their young, not being able to have children due to these changes in their hormones. So somebody asked if I could go over that distance piece again. So I'm going to go ahead and practice that one more time. So I invite you all to do it with me if you're at home. So go ahead and put your arm out straight, put your thumb up, and then close or cover one eye. So you're going to be looking right at your thumb and then doing your best to cover the animal with your thumb over top of it. And so you're looking at your thumb. And so the idea there is if it's a really small animal, you likely don't need to be as far away. We definitely recommend always giving all animals space. But if you think about a little chickadee versus a buffalo, it's going to be easier to cover up that smaller little animal. So it's a good way to conceptualize that the bigger the animal, the farther away we should be. And so thinking about whatever we can do to respect wildlife. I could talk about this for forever, but so definitely if you have more questions, feel free to ask those. And now we're going to talk a little bit about social media.
Yeah, so as you can probably tell, we didn't talk about all 7 principles. We tried to just highlight the ones that we think are most relevant to you, but there's always more to learn, and we really encourage you to go to our website and learn more about those other principles, especially if they're ones that really interest you. But we wanted to spend a tiny bit of time highlighting some of the other resources that we have. We strive to have a lot of guidance and resources for different activities or other elements about how we get outside, and one of those is our social media guidelines. So social media is one of those things where the research hasn't completely caught up. We are still working on studying the actual implications and impacts of social media in the outdoors. So these guidelines are really based more on anecdotal evidence and on experiences of outdoor recreators, of land managers, and they're constantly changing. So one thing to kind of keep in mind is as we do more research, these are being updated and they're changing as we learn more. So these social media guidelines, just like the 7 principles, are not meant to be rules. They're just tools to help us critically think about the potential impacts of social media and then how we can minimize those impacts. So the first one of these is to think before we geotag. A really common misconception is that Leave No Trace is anti-geotagging, but really what we're striving to communicate is that we just want everyone to think a little bit more critically about how they're using geotags and when it's going to be appropriate, how it's going to be the most appropriate, and what those potential impacts of either geotagging or not geotagging are, because there's impacts on both sides of this. So some things that you might consider with geotagging are what is the potential of this place going viral, or if a huge amount of visitors came to this area, what are some things that people need to know before they come here? But we also want to think about gatekeeping. We want to think about the potential of this area being hidden from other people or other people not being welcome here. And all of these are different components that we're going to kind of critically think about when we decide how to post a geotag, whether or not to post a geotag. And it's going to depend a lot on the place that we're posting a photo of, on our goals for that photo, on the way that we use social media, and on our personal outdoor ethic. So we want to kind of open up a conversation and have you tell us in the chat, what are some things you think about when you geotag or don't geotag? What are some of your reasons behind those things? Yes, we had a question there about what a geotag is. So that is the actual kind of pinpoint location of a photo. So it's something that people can kind of click on and then see the GPS coordinates or that exact location that that photo is taken. And some things that I think about with geotagging are maybe geotagging more broadly, like the national forest or the national park, so that people still can find that area. It's not being hidden away from them, but they also have the opportunity to kind of learn how long the hike is, or if they need permits, or what the bathroom situation is, while they're kind of seeing what specific hike that is. And again, this is something that's going to really depend on the photo you're posting, how you use social media, and your own outdoor ethic. So we have some people saying that they don't geotag for safety. Yeah, that can be something for your own privacy, that you choose not to geotag because you don't want people to really know exactly where you are. Some people said that they'll note the general location, but not the exact GPS coordinates. Yeah, I think that's a really common one. You like thinking about mixing places, broad tagging, but having the opportunity to do a little bit more research. Yeah, I think that that's a common way of looking at it, but the important part here is just that we're thinking critically about what the potential impacts of geotagging or not geotagging are, and just making our own decision of what we think fits best for that specific photo or that specific instance.
Definitely. And a few more comments came in that I really like that said, I like to tag broadly, and if someone really wants to know where it is, they can private message me or just try and share with just friends. And that's Totally, yeah, a great way to go as well. And so that really goes hand in hand with our other recommendations. As Erin was mentioning, being mindful of what your images portray. So if you show a photo and you have an exact location and maybe it's somewhere that you have to do some things that aren't so leave no trace to get there, to get that photo, or if you yourself are doing something that's not so leave no trace in the photo. For example, I know where Erin is at right now, that the whole state is on a statewide burn ban due to the wildfires. So if, say, she were to, which of course she wouldn't, but if she were to post a photo of her having a campfire out at a campsite, that would be maybe not the best messaging to be sharing with her family and friends, to be encouraging leave no trace practices, to be encouraging taking care of the natural world successfully. So being really mindful that you do have a following, no matter how big or small it is. Mine's not very big, but I'm still very conscious of thinking about, when I post something, is it going to be something that my friends and family know and can trust that it's, you know, within regulation and is in the best interest of that natural ecosystem around me, or not. I want to make sure that they know that it is. That goes hand in hand with another recommendation, which is encourage and inspire leaving social media posts. So we definitely encourage you all, as women who hike that have come together through this incredible online platform. You may be very engaged in social media, maybe you're not, but when you do post, we definitely encourage you to share what you've learned from us and what you continue to learn about how to take care of these outdoor spaces, and really use your social media as a platform to inspire practicing leave no trace, to inspire just getting people to think about how they can help take care of these natural spaces as well. So it really is a wonderful tool. It can be a really incredible tool. And so it's just really leaning into our power, owning that power, recognizing how we can all be teachers and help learn and educate one another. And so another side of that is to give back to places you love. So taking that time, if there's a place that you really love, that you've posted a lot about, that you have a lot of pictures from, and you see some impacts that are going on there, you see some trash, not only you could share that in one of your posts, but you could take some time to seek out some different volunteer opportunities. You can even share that on your social media as well. Right now, it's even more important, while we're social distancing and things like that, to connect with each other and to be having these conversations and sharing what it is that we love about these spaces and what we can be doing to continue to take care of them.
So the final piece of our Leave No Trace social media guidelines are that shaming is not the answer. We really believe that shaming is not an appropriate response to less than leave no trace behaviors. And while there might be some good intentions behind it, there can often be a lot of negative consequences. It can lead people to feel unwelcome in the outdoors. It can create a lot of fear, fear of making mistakes or fear about asking for help. It can lead people to even hide those behaviors, or do that behavior in a different way later on, so that maybe people aren't able to educate them about it. So while there might be good intentions behind it, we don't want leave no trace to ever be weaponized, for it to be used to police people in the outdoors, because we have all made mistakes. And remember what we talked about, it is a spectrum. It's not about perfection, it's about action. And we want to call people in, not call them out. We want leave no trace to be something that's educational, something that all people can be a part of, and mistakes are a piece of that. And shaming people for mistakes is not going to really go very far in that long-term behavior change and in really bringing people into this community and into this movement. So as I said, these guidelines are really constantly evolving, and as we're doing more research, they are likely to evolve even more. But the important piece here is just thinking critically about how we're using social media, what the potential impacts are, how we can minimize those, and just being aware that all of our actions, whether they happen in the outdoors or at home, they can have consequences on these outdoor spaces. And we want to try to minimize that as much as we can, as often as we can.
100%. And Erin, I love, so Amy just mentioned something in the comments that totally goes hand in hand with what you're saying. Amy mentioned, not sure if y'all have heard of Melanin Base Camp. We definitely have. So there's an article on policing Black and brown bodies through Leave No Trace, and we definitely encourage you to read that too. I personally have read it lots of times. I know Erin has too. I read it again yesterday just because it's such an important way to be thinking about it, and perspective that was shared through that author. I think about it all the time, and just I recall the author saying that in the photo she stepped off the trail and she had this great photo, but then she wasn't sure if she posted it that it would be received well. And that's so important, because really I want it to be heard here that from the Leave No Trace Center, it'll be received well. We're here to work together. We're here to talk together and navigate different solutions and learn from each other. And that's what we're talking about when it comes to social media. And it's really, really important to be keeping that in mind. If you see somebody shaming online using Leave No Trace, that is never the answer. That is never what we are encouraging. And just know that that is not coming from the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. If we all are going to get to the point that we're all practicing Leave No Trace, it has to come from us all learning from one another. And that is why I just love the way that Erin put it, that we are continuously learning and growing, especially when it comes to social media, and that we can all work together to continue to learn. So thank you all for pointing that out. And we're definitely so aware and conscious in having these conversations externally and internally too. So let's continue to have these conversations. On that note, in just a moment, we'll open it up for questions. So definitely let us know if you have any more questions. Put them in that Q&A box. I've been trying to write them down if I see them in the comments as well. So I'm going to provide you with some resources, but be throwing some questions in the Q&A as I'm talking here. So beyond this webinar, beyond this workshop, there are so many more resources out there regarding Leave No Trace education. We have a website that you feel free to check out. We have some activities on there that are free and welcome for you to share, to use, everything like that. And we are posting those in the chat right now, so you can click those links. And then we also have an incredibly extensive YouTube library. We put a lot of time and effort into these videos, so definitely go and check them out. Everything that we've been talking about today, from pooping outside, peeing outside, to everything in between, is all on there. So if there's anything that you want to reference, hear more about, anything like that, definitely take the time to seek out our YouTube channel, because there's a lot of great content on there. And then lastly, there are more opportunities for more training. If you're interested in furthering and having another workshop with us, let us know. Definitely reach out to us. We'd love to offer more. There's also an online awareness workshop on our website. And then we also have a trainer course all the way to a 5-day master educator course. Of course, things are a little bit different right now. Our trainer course is currently, we have a fully online version, and we are offering all of our education from home through webinars right now as well. But definitely reach out to us. We'd love to offer more trainings, and you can seek those out on our website as well. So how y'all can get involved beyond that is to share what you've learned. Call up a friend, call up a family member, let them know what you learned today, and pass it on.
Yeah, so we have got a couple of questions here, so feel free, if you still have questions, you can put them either in the Q&A or in the chat now, because we're kind of done using the chat, so we'll still be able to find them. So a couple of questions that I've seen. Can you talk about how Leave No Trace supports Indigenous practices that may not fall into the principles? One principle that comes to mind is leave what you find. That is a really great question. That's one that we get pretty often. So leave what you find can sometimes sound to people like that you cannot interact with nature, that you can't touch nature, that you can't be involved with it. But really what it means is being involved with nature, even doing things like foraging and gathering, but in a way that is going to allow those resources to come back again and again, and not deplete them to the point where they can't return, or where the people who come after you aren't going to be able to access them. So this is really where that kind of 13 billion visits number that we talked about earlier really comes into play. So we want to think about how many people are coming to the area and how we can do this in a way that's sustainable. And specifically with indigenous practices, there are many areas in our public lands where traditional gathers still take place and are still a really important part of that natural landscape and of the cultural heritage of these indigenous tribes and these native people. And that is something that is, it's part of that natural cycle. It is part of that place. And that is not something that we work against at all. We think that indigenous natural traditional gathers can absolutely still take place and be a sustainable, viable recreation opportunity or way of using that public space and those public lands. So that is a really great question. That's one we get pretty often. I also see one about burning trash and items, or trash items in a campfire. And one thing we didn't really talk about is another study that was done that looked at all of these different trash items being commonly burned in campfires. And all of these items actually released 3 different types of carcinogens, so cancer-causing chemicals, into the air. And those really aren't things that we want to be breathing in when we're like hanging around a campfire with our family. So even if things like paper plates or napkins that might seem like they're easy to burn in those areas, they can still have bleach and different chemicals. So it's going to be a better idea to pack those items out than to burn them. And they often too can be kind of like really floaty and fly out of the campsite and cause some fire, potential for fire damage. So it's much better just to pack those items out rather than relying on burning them as a way to dispose of them.
Definitely. Another question that we got earlier on in the chat that was missed was how do you recognize living biological soil crust? Back when we were talking about durable surfaces. And so a great way to recognize it, at first when it's young, it's going to be difficult to recognize because it's going to look pretty close to regular soil without those living organisms in it. So it's good when it's young, it's going to be close to the same color as soil, but you can kind of look and see it'll look kind of speckled. As it grows over time, it's going to start to become raised. It's going to get more bumpy and it's going to get darker till eventually it's black on top. So it can raise 6 inches, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet up, but it's going to take decades, right? And so at first it's going to be difficult. So first of all, knowing when you're in that type of ecosystem to be on the lookout for it, and always sticking to designated trails, especially in areas like that, because you can kind of just assume if you're in a desert ecosystem, if you're off trail, that there's likely going to be living biological soil crust nearby. So that was a great question as well.
Yeah, another option for that is if you do have to go off trail, you can hike in a sandy wash or on sandstone, something like that, places where you know for sure that there won't be that living biological soil crust. So that way, even if you can't recognize it, you still know that you're not on it.
Totally. All right, we have a few more questions here. What if getting 200 feet off trail is not an option? We have a huge drop-off / ravine in the forest where much of our hiking is. What would you say to that one?
Yeah, if you can't get 200 feet away, it's probably going to be a good idea to pack out your human waste. So using something like those WAG bags, which are really just, they're like portable bathrooms. They come with hand sanitizer, with toilet paper, and they have this powder inside that will solidify your human waste and make it easier to pack out. And then it also makes it safe to go in a landfill. So you can just throw it away in any trash can. They're really made for those kinds of situations where you just can't get 200 feet away, or even if you're hiking in like high alpine areas where once you get above tree line, there's not really good soil and you can't dig a hole, or if you're in snow or caves, anytime that you can't really meet all of those criteria for a cat hole, a wag bag or just packing out your human waste is going to be the best option so that it's not causing any of that contamination.
Thank you. Another great question we just got is, can you talk about the best cleaning, dishwashing / hygiene products to use for the environment? And people are going to have some different, things that they like best. Definitely seeking out something that's biodegradable. And this is a great question because we didn't talk about what to do with our gray water. So the best thing that you can do if you are going to be taking a bath, shower, or washing your dishes while outside, either at a camp or hiking, is to take your water 200 feet from any natural water source. So if you are going to be collecting water from a natural water source, making sure that you still take it 200 feet away. That's for a couple different reasons. First of all, to ensure that animals are still able to access that natural waterway, but also because we want to ensure that any type of soap, even if it's considered biodegradable, is not getting into that natural waterway. So biodegradable soap actually needs heat to break down, and that can happen in two ways, either by you heating up that water you're going to be cleaning with, or when you broadcast the water. So if you are washing your dishes, we suggest straining that dirty dishwater, packing out food particles, and then you can broadcast, which is kind of a sweeping motion, that dirty gray water to then eventually break down. Now, ideally, you're going to have something that's biodegradable, but still, what's going to be best is to pack out. But things that I use, like Dr. Bronner's, or like a shampoo bar, an all-in-one, things that I know are made out of all totally natural ingredients. So once I strain that dirty dishwater, and if I'm broadcasting it, I know that with heat from the sun, it'll eventually break down in the soil. Someone just mentioned camp suds are great too. I agree, that's another great one. Just always remembering that even if it says biodegradable, to not you wash anything directly into a water source, because it'll be too cold in the water source to break down.
So we are at our kind of cutoff time. We will stick around and answer these final questions, but we want to make sure that we thank you for joining us. If you have to hop off, if you have stuff going on, we really appreciate your time, and we hope that you were able to learn some stuff and that you're going to be able to put Leave No Trace into action and share what you learned with the other people that you like to go outside with. None of this really goes anywhere if it's just Monika and I talking about it. We really need you all to be out there and be putting it into action. So we appreciate your time, and you can always reach out to either of us if you have further questions or you want to talk about these things more. We would love to hear from you. Our emails are available right there. And you'll also get a follow-up email tomorrow that's going to have links to a lot of the things that we talked about. So if you weren't able to kind of grab them from the chat, you can have that as a resource as well. So feel free, if you have other things going on, to jump off, but we will answer these last couple of questions as well. I have a question here. Are there any resources for teaching LNT to kids? Yes, we have a massive amount of resources for teaching Leave No Trace to kids. We have a whole youth educator library, and this is full of free activities that you can download, that you can do with kids. They have a lot of the resources. They walk you through the whole thing. We also have PEAK, which is an online education tool. It stands for Promoting Environmental Awareness in Kids. And that is a really wonderful tool, especially as we're all kind of figuring out how to educate kids in this new COVID time. We have a ton of resources. We can plug that into the email tomorrow, and it is available on our website. We have kind of a whole youth section there.
And let's see. We have, at what point do things like cans turn to archaeological artifacts? So that's going to depend on the area that you're in. I know that places I remember there being a few places on the East Coast that it was written down that it's 50 years. And so I know that is often, I'm not sure for every area, but it is an interesting concept, right? Because I've seen cans that are over 50 years old that technically are considered a historical artifact. Now, If you're cleaning them up, is that a bad thing? There is that ethical conversation. If it seems like it's not doing anything beneficial to the ecosystem, it might be considered an artifact, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily a positive thing. So it's always important to learn about the rules and regulations in your area and learn what the specific laws are where you are, especially if you're asking if you're interested in cleaning up some things, because I know that I've talked with people that have felt that way and that they had to get land managers in the area involved. And so that might actually be, if you are interested in cleaning some things up and you have some trash that people are considering artifacts, it can be good to touch base with land managers first.
Pretty much in all national parks, those things are going to be protected, so you can't really do much with them, but it will depend in some other areas that you are. I think the 50 years comes from the Antiquities Act that is meant to protect those items. But yeah, it can be tricky because some of those things are like a beer can that you want to pick up. And Monika and I actually found a 50-year-old beer can the last time we were together and left it behind because it was older and probably an artifact, but seemed like litter. But it's all part of that nuance behind all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might be all of our questions.
We have one more. We have one that says, beyond trainings, how is L&T working to deliver messaging that is more inclusive? And also, how are we as an organization trying to diversify their voice? And that is such an important question, and we thank you for asking it. We are at a point where we are listening and we are learning in so many ways. And so we have a lot of things that are going on internally that we are changing and that we are really focusing on. We are standing for Black Lives Matter and with Black Lives Matter. And just in general, we are doing what we can to learn how to lift and amplify Black voices, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color within the outdoor community. But we are definitely in that learning stage, and we are here to be a part of the conversation and to grow together. So we definitely appreciate that acknowledgement and appreciate that question. And we look forward to continuing to be a part of this conversation altogether. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I do see one more question here. It says, I had to miss the beginning. Will this recording be available? Yeah, we can make the recording available so that you can also share it with other people within Women Who Hike, or you can rewatch it if there's some stuff that you want to listen to again. That can be something we include in that email tomorrow. And other than that, I think that is all of the questions that I see, unless you see any other ones, Monika.
I think that's all of them.
Well, we really want to thank you all for joining us. We hope that you're able to incorporate some of this stuff into your own outdoor recreation. And if you want to get more involved with Leave No Trace, you can sign up for our newsletter. You can head to our website. There is so much more to learn. You can watch those YouTube videos. And we hope to see you out on the trails someday, maybe when all this COVID stuff is over and we're back on the road. But we really appreciate your time and hope that you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you all so much. We hope to work and talk with you soon. Bye.